What's going on, Miracle Fighters, and welcome back to the Team Miracle 4 channel. I'm Pton, and today I'll be going through the Stoicheia Lianorn deck post set 9. So I will also be going through Lianorn's promo card in this deck because of the recent update to the official website, which confirms that we are going to be getting the Forest Protecting Hunter Prosper in the March Shop Tournament promo card series, I guess. So that's going to be next month. With that information, I decided to just do a Lianorn deck profile and show you guys what the build of Lianorn, what my build of Lianorn will be once that promo comes out. Okay, so the Lianorn deck basically is a deck that focuses on triple boosting the Vanguard for probably the highest Vanguard attack for the lowest effort, as well as getting triple drive. The deck places emphasis on grade 1s and abilities that trigger on boost. The deck has since gotten a few waves of support already, and I would say that the many weaknesses of Lianorn when it first came out have been addressed through its supports. So without any further ado, let's get right into the deck. As always, we'll begin with the right deck. Honestly, nothing too amazing here, nothing too out of the ordinary here. We're just playing the basic Lianorn right line. So the starter is Corfi, our grade 1 is Gracia. All of these come in the start deck, or rather the trial decks, right? And then the grade 2 is Rectina, and the grade 3, we're not playing the Lianorn one, we're not playing the trial deck one, we're playing the upgraded one from set 7, Grand March of Full Bloom Lianorn. Okay, so let's talk about the starter first. The starter doesn't really matter, so you could play any Stoicheia starter. We're just playing this because it fits with the theme of the deck. For Gracia's effect is when rolled upon by Rectina, you can call yourself out to rearguard circle, which gives you a guaranteed rearguard for this rearguard reliant deck. Also, when Gracia boosts a Vanguard, she also gets 5k until the end of battle, making her a 13k booster, which can be pretty good when attacking on, if you're attacking on turn 2 and boosting using her, because that'll just make the deck even harder to guard. And dealing early damage is what you want as well, since when you reach grade 3 onwards, all your Vanguard attacks will usually be taken by the opponent unless nullified, because they're going to be massive. As for Rectina, the grade 2, her effect is when she's rolled upon, you can pay 1 Soul Blast to superior call a grade 1 or less card from your drop zone. Once again, this makes creating a field of boosters easier, and by the time you reach grade 3, if your opponent has not retired any of your rearguards, this right line gives you 2 rearguards, basically, 2 grade 1 booster rearguards onto the field, which is decent, and makes this right line one of the better ones in Stoicheia. So now let's move on to the grade 3s. Besides the 1 copy in the right line, or in the right deck, we are playing 3 additional copies of Grand March of Full Bloom Lianorn. Lianorn has 2 effects. Firstly, if she's on Vanguard Circle, you can pay an activated Counterblast 1 to draw a card and call a card from hand to Rearguard Circle. This effect is an easy +1 if you're going to be calling anyways, and gives just a bit more drawing to see your pieces. The main attraction of Lianorn lies in her second ability. When she attacks, you may Soul Blast 1 and discard a card from hand. If you do, you can boost with all of her standing back row units for her 1 attack, and if you boost it with 3 or more units, which is an entire row of grade 1 boosters, you can restand Lianorn and give her +1 drive until the end of battle. At the end of that battle, you can then restand 2 of your back row rearguards. So Lianorn with just 3 basic 8k boosters will become a 37k Vanguard, because 8 times 3 is 24, 24 plus 13 is 37. And if one of them is Gracia, from the right deck, which is a guaranteed, right, the number goes up to 42. 42k is insanely high for a first grade 3 turn Vanguard swing, and with the extra drive, right, because remember Lianorn's triple drive, it will pretty much make your opponent either take the damage or guard with a PG. The best part about Lianorn is the restand. So by restanding 2 of your boosters, you can actually reuse your boosters for your rearguards as well, so you don't waste them all on the Vanguard attack only. Lianorn thus works really well with your on boost and on hit skills, because they have twice the chance of triggering, first time for the Vanguard's attack, and second time when they boost the rearguard. And players also tend to no-guard Lianorn, which makes on hit skills, or rather on boost skills, right, on boost and on hit skills are much easier to activate. So yeah, the only issue with this skill is the soul cost. So Lianorn does require you to soul blast 1, and your right line already consumes 2 soul, one from Gracia and the other from Rectina. Rectina's one is not confirmed, but it does mean that you don't use the right line to the fullest potential. So generally, going into turn 3, you will only be at 1 to 2 soul. If you don't persona right or don't see any other soul charge cards, then the deck can actually run out of soul. So that was actually one of the problems with the Lianorn deck, and also one of the reasons why the deck wanted to play quite a number of persona rights, including a Trolloc one, because by rewriting you can get soul. However, with set 7 and the new promo card, the deck doesn't really have that much of a soul issue right now. That card that helped to solve the soul issue as well as give the deck a much needed offensive push is Resonance Dragon. So Lianorn before set 7 is just a 3 attack Vanguard deck, right? Your Vanguard is huge, but your opponent can just easily nullify them, and your rearguards are not like extremely strong or whatnot. Early game, your opponent will just also take your Vanguard, and 3 attacks just doesn't really cut it if you don't have built-in crits or, you know, other shenanigans. However, in set 7, Resonance Dragon changed the deck forever. So what does Resonance Dragon do? Resonance Dragon is one of Lianorn's best support that turns this 3 attack deck into a 4 attack deck. 4 attack deck with a big Vanguard attack. So first effect, when Resonance Dragon attacks, if you boosted a total of 3 times that turn, which is pretty much guaranteed with Lianorn's effect, right? Resonance Dragon becomes an 18k attacker. So it's a simple power up, nothing too special. 18 boosted by an 8 is just like a 26, which is an awkward number, but 26 is always better than just 21, right? But I mean, free 5ks are free 5ks, so we'll take those. But here comes the second effect. At the end of the battle that Resonance Dragon attacked, if your Vanguard is a Lianorn and you boosted a total of 5 or more times this turn, you may counterblast 1, send Resonance Dragon into soul, and restand one of your rearguards. Boosting 5 times might sound a bit crazy at first, but if you think about it, Lianorn boosts 3, and then you will get to restand 2 of your boosters as well, which means that it's possible to boost 5 times. So it just means that Resonance Dragon has to be your 3rd attacker, right? But that doesn't really matter. What matters is the restand. So this card is Lianorn's way of creating a 4th attack to break the 3 attack deck barrier and increasing the kill potential and ceiling of the deck. This is very significant for Lianorn because Lianorn can now multi-attack with the rearguards, in addition to having that big Vanguard attack that we all know that Lianorn can do. Since you're expected to check some triggers with your triple drive, this card can really make use of those triggers, because you can actually give the triggered power, or rather trigger effects, to one rearguard and restand the rearguard with Resonance to make use of that trigger effect twice. Also, by going to soul at the end of its battle, it replenishes the soul that you use for Lianorn. So in a way, its cost becomes a way to generate resource for this deck. So all in all, Resonance Dragon is just a super impactful card for the deck that every Lianorn deck should definitely play. For the Grade 2s, other than the one Rectina in the right deck, we are playing just 4 more Grade 2s in the main deck. So that'll be 3 copies of Creed Assault and a copy of the atrocious Moth Go Maple. Not a lot of Grade 2s because, once again, this deck values boosters more than attackers, but I think 4 is enough, and this deck has ways to bring back cards from the drop zone as well, so you don't really have to be that afraid of not having enough attackers. But yes, let's get right into their skills. So for Creed Assault is the deck's main restand target for Resonance. It has a weird and troublesome restriction that prevents him from attacking if you have not restood that turn, but when he does get to attack, he gets plus 10,000 power and becomes an easy 20k beat stick. 20k with a booster, with a grade 1 8k booster, goes up to 28k, which forces a 20k shield from the opponent, which is very nice. The ingenuity of this card in the Lianorn deck is that Lianorn's skill to restand 2 of the boosters after her attack automatically clears the restriction on Creed Assault. To me, Creed Assault was definitely not made with Lianorn in mind, I don't think. It's more for, like, I don't know, Flagberg or something like that. But it was a card that somehow made sense with Lianorn and was a nice coincidence that ended up working. I know some players go for 4 copies of him to ensure they see crit assault, but I think 4 might be a little bit too much. 3 is enough, and the reason for that is because crit assault pre-grade 3 turn cannot really be used for anything. You can't use it to rush, can't use it to have like a good grade 2 turn or what. So I don't want to clog myself with too many copies of this card too early, and generally the deck just needs 1 copy of him in the front row, and the other one will just be Resonance Dragon. So for now, I think 3 works just fine. I would play 4 of him if more decks get retiring or bot decking abilities, which appears to be the case with some of the new red lines. So 4 does sound appealing, but that will require more testing, and so I will just play 3 copies for now. The other grade 2, as you all know, is just Maple. When a grade 3 Greater Vanguard is placed, she comes into play from the drop zone for free. Just a straightforward +1 and easy discard fodder for the right deck, or even Lianorn herself, because she needs a discard for the cost. She's not the best attacker, she's just a 10k body, but a free plus is a free plus, and she can come in clutch and retire heavy matchups. She's also a grade 2 that you can just plop down early game, attack with her, intercept with her, and still be able to bring her out on the turn that you ride into Lianorn. So it's not too bad, right? And that basically rounds up to grade 2s. Very little amount, but just enough. The main bulk of the deck will be the grade 1s, and really the deck is carried by the quality of the grade 1s that you play. To get the Sentinels out of the way, we are just playing 3 copies of the Stoicheia, or rather DPGs, right? The ones that says you don't have to discard a card if your hand is going very low, if your hand has only 1 card. And then I'm playing 1 Elementaria Sanctitude for the grade 4 matchups or against decks that have Vanguards with triple drive. Lianorn gets +1 drive, so she will not be affected by any Elementaria Sanctitudes, which is great. But yes, the 1 Elementaria Sanctitude really does help. And it's also really useful against garbage trick decks, so like Flagbird Dragon or Lianorn. Right. Basic stuff there, not much to explain. If you don't have Elementaria Sanctitude, you might even consider going just all 4 DPGs, because in clutch situations, DPGs can still act as 6k boosters, just to have 3 boosters for Lianorn. But that's for those very, very close matchups. And it may not come out that often. It's really up to you guys, but I think the Elementaria is really helpful. So personally, I would go for the Elementaria. Anyways, our main grade 1, one of our main grade 1s in this deck is the performing Pton Dianta. So when Dianta is placed from hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you may pay 1 counterblast to superior color grade 3 or less card from your drop zone. This pretty much means she can revive any card you want in this deck from the drop zone on the turn that she's played. This gives you a lot of freedom when discarding cards for the right deck, or just discarding cards in general, example for Lianorn skill, because you know that if you draw into Dianta, you can always get the card back. Or if your hand already has Dianta, you know you can get her back, get the card that you discarded back the following turn. Dianta is fantastic and makes filling the field and reusing cards like Crit Assault and Resonance Dragon much easier. So back to the Crit Assault thing, let's say your opponent attacks Crit Assault. If you know, or if you have Dianta in your hand, you can actually just let the attack go and then still be able to bring out Crit Assault the following turn. This also means that she's great in retire heavy matchups, just to help you bring out more bodies. So the reason I keep on emphasizing on retire heavy matchups is because Lianorn's main weakness is not having enough rearguards for her to play properly. So it's always good to have cards like this that can give you pluses to the board so that you don't run out of rearguards. Dianta also becomes a 13k booster / attacker if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rearguards, which is a guarantee most of the time for this deck. This means that she can not only hit Vanguards unboosted if you ever have to use her as an attacker, but having 2 of her as well as a 1 Gracia, which is a guaranteed 1, in the back row will mean that you can power up Lianorn to 52k. And 52k is like a 55k guard for 2 to pass. That's like 3 triggers and a 10k draw, which is kind of insane. So yeah, free power is always welcomed. And I guess 13 also makes her as a booster for Crit Assault really well, because Crit Assault is 20 plus 13 is 33. Moving along, I also play 4 copies of the Lively Rhythm Biara. So this one came in this trial deck for Lianorn, and I think it's still a very nice card to be played for the deck. So when the attack that Biara boosted hits a Vanguard, you can put a grade 2 or less card from your hand into the soul and draw a card. Biara is one of the main grade 1s that you want to see early game because of the filter and the soul charge that she kind of provides. Having her behind the Vanguard early game will almost guarantee that your Vanguard hits, and that will in turn set off her effect to give you that extra soul and a way to see more of her pieces. So she kind of is like a free fuel for the soul for this deck. I also play 2 copies of the Maiden of Deep Impression, Urdula. So Urdula is actually a really interesting card. So 2 effects. The first is she gives you the freedom to swap and move cards within the same row during a main phase, meaning you can move cards from the left column to the right column, for example. And that is something that we are not able to do in Vanguard normally. In Vanguard, we can only move cards or rearguards within the same column and not really, to different rows. But with Urdula on the field, your entire field is like free, right? You can move any card where you want. This is actually a really cool effect occasionally. Mainly just to maybe switch Vanguard boosters. Let's say you committed a Vanguard booster too early, right? If it's a conventional deck, a Vanguard booster that you committed early will just remain there for the rest of the game. But Urdula can just swap cards around, and her second effect makes this swapping ability even better. So what's the second effect? Her second effect is continuous. Your unit in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. This essentially gives resist to your attackers, to your front row attackers, which is very useful to protect your crit assaults. So it will not be retired or bot decked easily, but rather if your opponent wants to get rid of your attackers like this, they will have to waste 1 attack to swing towards your rearguard. This has come in handy so many times and kind of redirects retiring effects and stuff to her. Not just that, her effect also extends to the Vanguard, so she not only protects the rearguard, but in certain situations, giving resist to your Vanguard can be really useful. So one major example is against the Drajubal matchup. So she completely counters Drajubal's power reduction skill. If you look at Drajubal requires you to choose a Vanguard and reduce its power. But if you put Urdula behind the Vanguard, your opponent cannot choose your Vanguard. And in that case, they cannot reduce your Vanguard's power, and Drajubal essentially becomes a Soul Blast 4 to get +1 critical. This greatly lowers the offensive capability of the Drajubal deck and makes the matchup really skewed towards your favor in that case. So yeah, a couple of Urdulas can help in such a matchup, and it really reminds me of Buddy Fight because this effect makes her the perfect side deck card because of such a niche use. Right. So yep, 2 copies of Urdula, really interesting card to play in this deck. And now we get to the promo part of the deck. So Lianorn, just like many D decks now, has also gotten her essential promo, so she's not immune to the promo curse or whatever you call it. For her, it is the Forest Protecting Hunter Prosper, a currently Japanese exclusive card that will get an English release next month or so. So Prosper is a really game-changing card for Lianorn. He has 2 effects, 2 very simple effects, but very effective effects. Firstly, when Prosper is placed by a card's ability, you may soul charge 1. Lianorn's built-in skill to draw and superior call already sets this off, but other ways to proc this effect will be either on turn 3 through Rectina's effect to superior call a card from the drop zone, or even through Dianta. This simple soul charge makes Lianorn's cost of Soul Blast so much easier to fulfill. There will be unfortunate games where you don't see Resonance Dragon, or where you don't see your Lianorns to superior right, or even Biaras, right? And so having a way to increase your soul ensures that you can activate Lianorn's effect every single turn. The soul charge also works well with the right line because, as I mentioned, the right line sucks out 2 soul, or rather pulls out 2 soul. So generally going to turn 3, you only have 1 soul left. Prosper therefore allows you to fully maximize the +2 from the right line without worrying about running out of soul. This makes Prosper one of the main cards that you want to see in your mulligan. You really want to mulligan for this card. Seeing him early just gives you the liberty to use the right line to the fullest potential and makes games much more smoother. Prosper also has a second effect that synergizes really well with Resonance Dragon. So whenever Prosper boosts, if your Vanguard is a Lianorn, the unit in the same column as Prosper, which is the unit in front of him, gets plus 5k until the end of turn. As you know by now, the Lianorn deck is the deck that rewards booster skills. So with Lianorn allowing you to restand 2 of your boosters and using them to boost again, Prosper, if you restand Prosper and boost with him again, Prosper can essentially give a total of plus 10,000 power until the end of turn to the unit that it's boosting, to the attacker of that column essentially. So take for example this kind of setup, which is not difficult to achieve. Right? What you can do is, firstly, your Lianorn will definitely attack first, and then you use her effect, so +1, discard 1, triple boost. Prospers, now because they are boosting, they give plus 5,000 power to their to the column in front, to the unit in the same column as them. So in this case, it's crit assault for this Prosper and resonance for this Prosper. End of battle, that Lianorn attacked, we stand these 2 guys. When they boost again, they give an additional 5k, which means that in total, crit assault got plus 10,000 power for free from Prosper. And so this column becomes from a 28 to a 38,000. That's a 10k shield increment, and 10k shields are not easy to come by in Vanguard D standard. Same goes for this resonance column, and after the resonance dragon attacked, you can move him into the soul and restand this. Since the plus 10k lasts until the end of turn, crit assault instead of 20 is now hitting for 30, which means he can go above defensive triggers if the opponent does strike any. Otherwise, 30k calls for a 20k shield from just 1 attack, unboosted, and that's insane. And we are not even considering Persona Rise and trigger effects. So yeah, all in all, Prosper is probably the best, the most well designed grade 1 for the Lianorn deck so far, being able to give resource, as well as synergizing with the boosting effect of Lianorn and the restanding effect of Resonance Dragon. I do know of some players that have considered running Prosper directly in the right deck, just to guarantee to see him. You can do that, but I don't, so my game plan is just to mulligan and see Prospers as early as possible. Finally, we have 1 flex slot left for the deck, and for me, I'm just playing 1 copy of the new DBD09 common, Horu Mushroom. So it's not a conventional card for Lianorn. It was designed more for Grand Fear, which is the new Stoicheia right line. But Horu Mushroom I find pretty interesting. So its effect is activated, you can send him into the soul to superior call 2 plant tokens to rearguard circle. The rest of the skill to give plus 5k to one of the rearguards doesn't really matter because our Vanguard will never be Grand Fear. But essentially the idea of Horu Mushroom is that he adds additional emergency soul charge if you ever do need it, whilst also providing 2 boosters from 1 card. So he does disappear, but you do get 2 boosters from his disappearance. Plant tokens are just 5k boosters, but sometimes all you need are just boosters, right? You don't really care about the power. You just want to be able to proc Lianorn's effect. So in those kind of matchups, he does come in really handy. Having more soul charge options is always good. Honestly, any card will do in this slot. You might even change it to Ardrilla, you might play other great ones, which I will talk about very soon right now. But it's just that I thought that Horu Mushroom was an interesting card. So for the alternatives, before we go into the triggers, for this flex slot, you can actually increase some of the 3-offs to 4 copies. For example, Crit Assault, you can bump him up to 4 if you really want to see Crit Assaults in your games. You can even play Clapping Dragon, right? If you want some card draw, as well as the 23k beat stick that can be restood by Resonance Dragon. The reason I don't play Clapping Dragon for now is because I prefer to use the CBs for Resonance, Lianorn, and even Dianta. Now the deck has a lot of ways to soul charge, but there's not really any counter charge in this deck, so I didn't really want to play that many cards that use counter blasts. And that's the reason I'm not playing Clapping Dragon in my list, but you guys can definitely consider that because Clapping Dragon is a really good card. Otherwise, Stoicheia also has a plethora of grade 1s, really interesting grade 1s and pretty decent grade 1s as well. So if you want more 13k boosters, maybe you can consider Purettes or Noblesse Flit. Both are 13k not just on boost, but also when they attack, making them so much better than Gracia already, right? Noblesse Flit is 13k as long as your opponent is grade 2 or greater, so that's very easy. Pure Red does require you to have a couple of other great ones on the field, but that's also really easy as well if you're playing the Lianorn deck correctly. I used to play Kusi, which is a Sylvan Horn Beast for the 15k boost, but I have since removed him because I've had games where, you know, the slot behind my Vanguard is taken up already, and I just needed any attacker or just any card to call into my other columns. However, because Kusi's restriction forces me to call to the center back row circle, which is already occupied, and I didn't have to replace that, I actually lost that game. So it was really unfortunate. And I think the only way that I will continue to play Kusi is if I increase the number of Urdulas so that she's on the field when I draw into Kusi. Otherwise, I don't see myself playing Kusi anytime soon. I don't think it's really that needed as well. But of course, you can always consider Kusi, right? Another card that you can consider as well is Sucuse. So back when it first came out, I didn't really give much thought to Sucuse, but I feel like Sucuse can be pretty interesting and a really good way to use some of the excess soul that you might generate through all this soul charging that you're doing here. Basically what Sucuse does is that he can either become a 10k booster or add some retire or field control into the Lianorn deck. This effect can actually mess up certain decks, and I think it's pretty interesting, and I think makes Lianorn a bit more well-rounded. Like, you actually have answers to decks that have annoying rearguards. So yeah, Sucuse, you can definitely consider that because soul is no longer that scarce now with all this support. And lastly, you can also play the new Grade 1 Maple from set 8. So this new Grade 1 Maple only triggers on Persona right turns, but when you do call her out, she is a 13k body, so she can hit Vanguard unboosted and be a 13k boost as well. So a revivable booster is always not too bad, and if that is your style, you can always go for that. Otherwise, you can also play Gratias Gradale. I'm not playing Gratias Gradale in this deck because I prefer to have units that can be called down by Lianorn, and I don't think that Gratias Gradale is super needed in this deck. But of course, if you have Gratias Gradale, definitely do consider it for this deck, because Persona Right does help this deck quite a bit, especially since you can also restand your rearguard that has been powered up by Persona Right. So all those are all valid options, and essentially, as long as you have, you know, the core cards like the Resonance, a couple of Creeds, Diantas, and Prospers, the rest of the deck is pretty much free and easy. It depends on what you want to accomplish. And finally, to round up the deck profile, we are going into our trigger lineup. The trigger lineup that I'm playing is pretty simple. So there's 4 regular heals. You can play effect heals if you want, as always. I'm playing 1 front, 3 draws, 7 critical triggers, and 1 over trigger, the Stoicheia over trigger. So let me explain. Maybe we'll start with the crits. So I'm playing quite a number of crits because Lianorn is a triple drive deck, or rather it's a deck that you can get +1 drive. So you have 3 checks, and playing more crits means that the chances of you triple critting your opponent is higher, right? Generally for Lianorn's attack, your opponent will either say no guard or nullify it. In that case, playing more crits will allow you to potentially deal more damage to the opponent. I'm playing 3 copies of Elena. Elena can go into Soul at the end of the battle that should boost it to give one of the units power, but mostly it's for the Soul Charge. It's not too needed, but I'm just pointing out that, you know, we do have Soul Charge in the Grade 0 in the trigger options as well. For the draws, playing the Lina, the 10k draws. Draws are, in my opinion, still needed for Lianorn, even though she already draws. It's because you want to constantly have a full field for the Lianorn deck. And with more decks getting retire options, it may be harder to keep a field now and into the future. So draws will help you to replenish that bit of field that your opponent kills off, and that you see more pieces in a way. I'm playing 1 front. You can actually play crits if you want. I just thought that the front would be interesting for the 20k shield, and late game if you check the front, it can be very scary because the front powers up your front row, and Resonance can restand one of your rearguards in the front row. for their 4th attack. So in a way, you can actually use fronts quite effectively. But mainly it's for the 20k shield. Just the one-off 20k shield can really help sometimes. The overtrigger, we definitely are playing the Blessed Favor overtrigger over any other overtriggers. So for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure all of you know by now, but what Blessed Favor or what the Stoicheia overtrigger does is it can give, when checked offensively, it can give one of our units 100 million power, draw a card. On top of that, the additional effect allows you to draw one more card, give one of your units +1 critical, give your entire front row plus 10,000 power, and if your damage zone has the same number of cards as your opponent's damage or more cards, you can heal 1 damage. Essentially, it's all 4 of the other trigger types combined into one. It's a rainbow trigger. And this is very, very useful when checked at almost any point in the game, just to give you that bit of draw power, give you, front row power, even more attacking power, gives you crit and potentially even heal you and allow you to survive longer. Blessed Favor is definitely one of the better overtriggers in that sense, and you definitely want to be playing Blessed Favor. One interesting thing that I've encountered while playing this deck is when I check the Blessed Favor overtrigger offensively and I have cards like Resonance and maybe any other attacker, I can actually give the 100 million power and all the crits and stuff like that to the attacker that I'm going to be withstanding through Resonance's effect. So that's actually a very scary play for the deck if you do check into the overtrigger. And I will say that this deck has higher chances of checking into the overtrigger than some other decks just because of the inbuilt +1 drive. So yeah, very simple trigger lineup. You can definitely play 8 crits, 3 draws, 4 heals if you want to, but this is what has been working for me. So this is essentially the entire Lianorn list that I will be playing after Prosper's release, right? So I think it's pretty straightforward. It's very easy, very simple to see how the deck works, right? Essentially just swing with a Vanguard for a gigantic Vanguard attack, see whether they guard, check 3 times how many trigger effects to one of the rear guards that is not Resonance, have the rearguard attack, swing with Resonance, restand that rearguard, 4 attacks, and you can do this as early as turn 3. So against the Grade 2 Vanguard, you can push a lot of damage if the opponent is not careful. And that's, I think, one of the strengths of Lianorn. Lianorn already has a big Vanguard attack. Now with your rearguards being stronger, the deck can be quite a powerhouse. And with 3 checks, if you're really trigger lucky that day, you can just like 1 turn kill your opponent. Of course, the deck will continue to get more support since the player Urara is in the newest season, and I think she is kind of important as well. So I'm actually quite interested to see what Lianorn supports will look like from DPT 10 onwards. But for now, hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Do leave any comments and queries about the deck in the comment section down below, and if you have any suggestions, do share them with me as well. I'm interested to see how you guys are building Lianorn. And yeah, that's it for me. I'll talk to you guys again very soon, and bye guys.